program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Hello again to you, Guyana. Welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks for joining us. It's a new month. It is the second day of August in the year 2019. Of course, I know some of you are still recovering from yesterday's Emancipation Day celebration. Some of you are actually still celebrating, and I know some people, some organizations, and various groups and so on, non-profit organizations, some people actually celebrate the entire month, but that is a very good thing. Once when you're celebrating, that you do it in a safe and a pleasant manner and a comfortable manner, that we can all be here again next year. That would obviously be 2020, to celebrate another wonderful Emancipation Day. Now, in light of that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to have not so much of a heavy program today. The president, again, as usual, some days he's extremely busy. He does so many things in one swipe, in one breath, that as I said last week, I don't know where he gets the energy from. Yesterday, he attended two major events. I am going to bring you his speech because I thought that was very, very important and very, very significant for people to understand the president's position regarding our people and regarding us being able to be emancipated in a sense, in whatever way, shape, or form. He spoke to a crowd at Union. That's for those of you not familiar, it's Union number 53 Village, Barbies. He was there yesterday and he spoke to a significant gathering, and his sentiments were really interesting. I know some of you would have seen it splashed across the newspapers, but you get a better sense and a better understanding of everything that he would have said when you hear his presentation. It's in its entirety. It's a little more than half hour, so I'm definitely going to be bringing that to you today. On the second half, I'm going to try to bring to you, of course, most of you know by now, the new GECOM chair. I know the Constitution provides for a GECOM chairman, but obviously when it comes to these things, I like to celebrate women. So the new GECOM chairperson, or the new GECOM chairwoman, Justice Claudette Singh, she would have been sworn in earlier in the week. The choice was made, the decision was made last week. She would have been sworn in earlier this week. So I'm going to try to see how much of that swearing in ceremony and the speeches and so on I can bring to you before we wrap up the program. So in essence, today's program is dealing with emancipation and the new GECOM chair. So it's straightforward. You're not going to be hearing much from me. Although on the note of GECOM, even before I bring to you the president's presentation, emancipation presentation yesterday, I must address something, and it really is heart-rending and shocking. I know I have a colleague who says that, nothing in life should shock you now because life is so unpredictable and life is so fragile at times. But we're not talking about that in this case. There were what I called initially rumors circulating, I think a week before the last. This is at the beginning of the house-to-house registration exercise, where you had sentiments about people chasing GECOM workers away and throwing water on them and all these sorts of things. But now the reports are confirmed. Some residents apparently are even losing their dogs on the persons who are doing the house-to-house registration. And I am trying to figure out, when did we as a people become so beastly and so inhumane? How could you possibly do that? People are losing their dogs when people come. Again, I'm saying it is absolute ignorance, complete ignorance for that gentleman from the opposite side of the political fence to be telling people not to get registered. It is even more stupid for you as a person to be listening to him and not get registered, because of course getting registered, becoming registered, is about more than voting. It's bad enough that you're listening to his ramblings that have basically become the ramblings of a madman. But you're going to go as far as to throw water on these people who are doing a job. They're getting paid to do that job. You're throwing water on them. It's bad enough that you're cursing them out, but you're going a little further. You're going to loose your dogs on them. I hope some of you who do that, especially if people are injured, they take you to court. And I trust that the law deals with you. The fullest extent of the law deals with you, because I'm saying if you're going to do something like that, I no longer consider you a human being, and you should think about it. If for those of you who feels, it is so good for you to, again, loose your dogs on them, throw water. So I've got reports of people pelting the GECOM workers out of their yards or certain communities. Come on, when did we become this type of people, this group of people? It is really unbecoming. As I said initially, when I heard it 2 weeks ago, I figured, look, man, it's just rumors. Sometimes because we know for a fact that the gentleman was telling people from the beginning, do not get registered. So I figured that, it makes it sound a bit more dire to add these sort of rumors to it, but these are confirmed reports that this is what people are doing, and I really don't understand it. And I think some of you just really need to take some time and think about what it is that you're doing. I can't believe it. That gentleman has brainwashed so many of you. The brainwash has been so successful that you don't even realize that you're doing a wrong. I mean, come on. But enough of that for now. I really didn't want to spoil the mood, but I had to address it, and this is not being productive adults, it's not being productive citizens, and it's not being kind. Again, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on, it is actually inhumane. But enough of that for now. As I said earlier, I really want to keep you a little bit longer in the emancipation mood. And on that note, I'll now ask our operators to play for you the President, His Excellency, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger, addressing his main emancipation address yesterday at number 53 Village, Berbice. I trust that you learn a lot from what you are going to hear at this point. This is Facing the Nation. Stay with us.
God must love you and make the sun come out like this. Honorable Moses Nagabutu and Mrs. Nagabutu.
Somebody push up the ball.
Dr. George Norton, Honorable Minister of Social Cohesion, who has responsibility for these cultural events. Honorable Basil Williams, Minister of Legal Affairs. Honorable Karen Cummings, Foreign Minister. Honorable Amna Ali, Minister of Bicycles. Honorable, am I incorrect? Other members of the National Assembly. Honorable Carl Greenwich, Foreign Secretary. Mr. David Armagan, Chairman of the East Berbice Quarantine Region. Mayors and councillors. Region 6 has the most tongues, No other region has 3 tongues. Region 6 has 3, so I hope all 3 mayors are here. Congratulations. Members of the Regional Democratic Council, but particularly members of the African Cultural Development Association, the Berbice Association of African Groups, and the local organizing committee and other members of the East Berbice Quarantine community who contributed to making this event possible this afternoon. Villagers, members of this great Union Village, number 53. Number 53 renamed itself Union Village and defy everybody to change in there. Distinguished invitees, representatives of the diplomatic corps, members of the media. As the chairman said, I'm happy to be here for the second year running. In fact, it's my third year or fourth year in Berbice. I was at Ithaca, as at Sandport, as Liverpool, as at Gibraltar, and here I am at Union Village. People in Georgetown won't let me back in when I finish here. But I told them this is a big country. And African Guyanese live in all of the villages all around the country. Guyanese live throughout this country, and it's my duty to visit all of them. Today we commemorate emancipation. And I've said over and over again that this is the single most important day in Guyanese history. It is the culmination of an experience, that is to say, the greatest crime against humanity, the transatlantic trade in captive Africans, and the bitter era of enslavement for over 200 years in this country. These two events, the transatlantic trade in captive Africans and the era of enslavement in the colonies of Demerara, Essequibo, and Berbice, have made, among other countries, have made the United Nations declare a decade for people of African descent. And I'll come back to that later. The enslaved Africans in Berbice and Demerara and Essequibo never accepted their enslavement. They rebelled constantly. They fought against enslavement. And in so doing, Berbice holds a proud place. Berbice holds an unsurpassable place in the achievement of emancipation. One of the earliest massive revolts, which lasted 1 year, occurred in Berbice. That is the great revolt of 1763, led by our national hero Kofi. 80 years later, there was another great revolt. And this time in Demerara, a revolt inspired by Kwamina. And in that revolt, the British Army and the militia shot down about 200 African Guyanese at Bachelor's Adventure on East Coast Demerara. It was the worst massacre in the history of our country. And that was in 1823. And exactly 10 years later, in 1833, the British Parliament was forced to pass the Emancipation Act. In fact, although the act was passed in 1833, as you heard from the historians here, it was not until 1838 that Africans got their full freedom. But there was another revolt, and that is in Essequibo, a revolt led by Damon. In 1834, they introduced something called the apprenticeship system, a bogus freedom, a fake freedom. And when Damon raised the flag at La Belle Alliance, they arrested him, scattered his supporters, brought him to Georgetown, and outside of the Parliament buildings, they hung him in October 1834. So, as we celebrate emancipation, we pay homage to those people, Kofi, Kwame, and Damon, who led revolts to make us free. But emancipation is not only about revolts. Emancipation is about the determination of the people who won their freedom. We were able to build a society made up from people from the Americas, the Amerindian people, people from Africa, the African people, people from Europe, the Portuguese, people from Asia, the Indians and Chinese. And today, we're all one nation, we're all one people, although we came from 4 different continents. And since emancipation, we've been struggling to build a united nation against formidable obstacles. And we have paid tribute to those people who worked ceaselessly over the last 181 years since emancipation to create what we have today, the nation of Guyana. But as I said, emancipation was not all about rebellion. It was not all about revolts. It was about the necessity for ensuring that there was economic freedom. Freedom from the plantation system, freedom from enslavement. And more than anything else, it was African labor which converted this coastline from bush and mud into plantations by draining the swamps, digging irrigation canals and conservancies, constructing city fences with their muscles, with their hands, with shovels. African labor after emancipation transformed the entire economy. They were the trailblazers of agricultural diversification, cultivating fruits, ground provisions and vegetables, breeding livestock. They pioneered the major industries on which Guyana's diversification was erected. Sugarcane, paddy production, bauxite and gold and diamond mining, balata bleeding, logging. All of these things emerged only after emancipation, only after freedom was able to foster the diversification of our economy. Africans in particular, after 1838, established free villages. Households were able to establish their own farms, which produced fruit and ground provisions and livestock and vegetables to be sold in the markets. Micro businesses, bakeries, cottage industries, parlors, retail shops sprung up. A whole range of artisans, blacksmiths, carpenters, coopers, cobblers, joiners, tinsmiths, wheelwrights, all honed their talents in the villages, making Guyana a richer, a more diverse economy. So it was emancipation that lit the spark for economic freedom. It was the most important development of freed Africans in the Western Hemisphere. And that is why I declared the 7th of November, the day on which Victoria was purchased, the 7th of November 1839. In fact, this year would be the 180th anniversary of the purchase of Victoria. I declared the 7th of November National Day of Villages, because that was the day we remember when the village movement was launched. I know the other villages will contest. Queenstown says they were there before. Hopetown says they didn't find the documents in time. Buxton. But let us agree on Victoria as the first village. But that movement, wherever it started, transformed a string of plantations into a string of human habitation, human settlements, human villages, stretching from the Quarantine all the way to the Pomeroon. And let me quote from the historians. Let me quote how they describe this great village movement. Let us quote from Ron Farley, another famous Guyanese who came from Gibraltar village, Dr. Ron Farley. He wrote, quoting somebody else, the most spectacular and aggressive land settlement movement in the history of the people of the British Caribbean, and a movement which seemed to one planter in British Guyana to be certainly without parallel in the history of the world. This is what your forefathers did. They launched a movement without equal in the history of the world. So this great village movement is nothing to sniff at. It made world history. And we now have a string of villages, and you heard the names of those villages. Hopetown, Victoria, Danielstown, Queenstown, Pleasance, and many others. When the Africans established their villages, they built their own homes. No central housing and planning authority then. They built their own homes, they built schools, they built churches, and they cut their own farms on those lands. Economic emancipation was important. Every society, every community has to rest on an economic foundation. And our forefathers were right in seeking economic emancipation. But the greatest gift of emancipation, in my view, was the gift of education. You know, I've often spoken of the 4 horsemen of the Guyanese apocalypse, of crime, of disease, of poverty, and of ignorance. And I tell you people, ignorance is the worst thing in the world. If you ever reach an ignorant man, you're before to reach a criminal. You're before to reach somebody who's sick. And it is against ignorance that we need to struggle in years to come. And that is why we put so much emphasis on education. That is why our forefathers 180 years ago put so much emphasis on education. That is why listed among our heroes are people like Norman Cameron, himself a Barbician, a mathematician, a historian, an educationist, a dramatist. He established his own school, the Guyanese Academy. That's why we remember the Costello brothers, Austin, Cosmo, and Joseph, who established the Tutorial High School, which particularly catered for low-income Guyanese, parents who couldn't afford to send their children to the more expensive pay schools. So education is what opened the door to all Guyanese to become the best that they could be. Professional development, in public education, in academia, in public administration, public health. These African Guyanese who took hold of education were able to contribute more and more to the development of this country. In diplomacy, in business, in the arts, engineering, in law enforcement, legal services. All of these became possible because of our grasp of education. But the plight of Africans, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, did not escape the notice of the United Nations. And in 2013, 6 years ago, and later on, in 2014, they launched what is called the International Decade for People of African Descent. And you can see on your programs that abbreviation, IDPAD, and there's a local committee which is carrying on the work of the International Decade for People of African Descent. So, right now in Guyana, we adopted a program sanctioned and promoted by the United Nations for people of African descent, which includes many Guyanese here today. This international decade, my friends, acknowledges that Africans were the victims of the greatest crime in humanity, the greatest crime against humanity. And these victims continue to feel the effects of that crime, of dispossession and discrimination. And this international decade is a time for all of us, not only Africans, but for all governments which belong to the United Nations, to come together to overcome the prejudice and the discrimination which is still attached to the victims of those great crimes. The transatlantic trade in captive Africans and the enslavement on the plantations of the New World. The program of activities which we have adopted under the international decade has particularly focused on education. And let me quote from the resolution. One of the aims is to ensure that quality education is accessible and available in areas where communities of African descent live, particularly rural and marginalized communities, with attention to improving the quality of public education. These are the words of the United Nations. Listen to them carefully. To ensure that quality education is accessible and available in areas where communities of Africans live, particularly rural and marginalized communities, with attention to improving the quality of public education. This injunction has come from one of the highest international organizations, the United Nations itself. Let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, that your government, in accordance with this United Nations injunction, is committed to safeguarding the legacy of Africans, and in particular, to ensuring that the objectives of the international decade are met. And for that reason, the next 10 years, from 2020, when we return to office, until 2029, I'm glad you hear me good. From 2020 to 2029, it will be the national decade of development for Guyanese. And we are going to place emphasis on education. We don't have to be told this by the United Nations. We will do it ourselves. My brothers and sisters, every citizen, every Guyanese has a right to education. This is the basic entitlement of all of us, all of our children. Free education is an entitlement mandated by our Constitution, which states every citizen has the right to free education from nursery to university. And listen me good, listen me. Our expected petroleum revenues, apart from what will be devoted to our sovereign welfare fund, our expected petroleum revenues will help us to restore free education in accordance with our Constitution. Petroleum is not to enrich a few, it is to educate the many. Let that be understood, that those resources belong to a few generations and future generations will benefit, will profit from being educated. This must be an educated nation. It must be a nation of a few rich people and many poor and uneducated people. There must be a school in every village. This national decade of development I speak about must ensure that at least one primary school is established in every village. One village, one school. East Babis 13, this great region, has a population of 110,000 persons. It has 135 villages, but it only has 53 primary schools. I want to see a primary school in every single village. There must be a place for every child in school in Guyana. Every child must be able to get to school by road or by river. And that is why on my 70th birthday, on the 15th of July 2015, I launched what was known as the 3D system, but I call it the Public Education Transportation Service, PETS. And that service is working. Our petroleum revenue will be used in part to make sure that every Guyanese can get to school. Already, even without government money, there are 29 buses on the roads of this country, and Region 6 has gotten about 6 buses. East Bank Babis has bus. East Bank Kanji has bus. County Coast has bus. There are about 4,000 bicycles and some more coming to you this way this afternoon. These bicycles are meant for school children to get them to school on time. So we're not making fun with education. If you need 8,000 bicycles, you'll get them. If you need 80 buses, you'll get them. But every child must go to school. That is our aim. There's no better way to spend our petroleum profits than to ensuring that Guyana becomes a nation of educated citizens. And in every school, you must pay more attention to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, alongside the humanities. There will always be need for people who like to sing and dance. But to develop our resources, we also need botanists and engineers. We need architects. We need mathematicians. We need to develop a knowledge-based society. We need to extend ICT into all of our schools, into our teacher training college, all over the country. That is why I have personally provided funds, not for fashion shows, but I've created something called the National Endowment for Science and Technology. And I expended millions of dollars to schools which build laboratories and which are bent on teaching science and technology. A friendly government, the People's Republic of China, gave me about $52 million. The money went straight to Saltwater College of Education to fix the laboratories that just produce teachers who are trained in science. That's where the money is going to go. Guyana must become the best educated country in the English-speaking Caribbean. why earlier this year I went up to Kulu and re-established the Guyana Youth Corps. You know, in years gone by, the Youth Corps had morphed into the National Service. 19 years ago, the other people destroyed the National Service, broke it up. Young people coming out of the schools who couldn't find work, had nowhere to go. So I set back up the Youth Corps so that children who are not in education, who are not in employment, who are not in training, can receive vocational education through the Guyana Youth Corps. It's all about education. It's all about getting our young people into the world of work. That is what is going to be taking place over the next 10 years during our National Decade for Development. My brothers and sisters, today we celebrate. Today we commemorate the efforts of our forefathers. But let us think about their intelligence. They were illiterate, but they had the good sense to build schools for their children, to build churches to worship, to build farms to feed themselves, and to build homes for their families. If we want to pay homage to them, let us imitate their thrift and their intelligence by ensuring that every village has a school, every family has a home. My brothers and sisters, the first Emancipation Covenant, as I like to call it, of 1838, gave everyone the right to live in a society free from enslavement. This new covenant today, on our 181st anniversary of emancipation, we think of a new covenant to ensure that every Guyanese can live in a country without ignorance. Emancipation means education. We are on the right path, and we'll continue on the right path for the next 5 and 10 years and beyond. We are proud of the changes that we have brought about in the lives of Guyanese citizens. That change is neither quick or easy, but we will continue to combine the energies of all Guyanese, the present and future generations, to make sure that we're not only politically free, but that we're free from the scourge of ignorance. Today I'm happy to be here at Union again to celebrate emancipation. Thank you for the preparations that you made, welcoming Guyanese from all of the regions. And may God bless Union Village. May God bless all Guyanese. Happy Emancipation Day to you all.
All right, if you're now joining us, you would have been watching their President Granger's address at Union number 53 Village, Berbice, of course, East Coast Berbice, quarantine. That would have been yesterday on Emancipation Day. And a number of interesting things there he said. One of the things that we should note is the fact that he said that from 2020 to 2029 will be the National Decade of Development for Guyanese. And, you know, this is one thing with him. He has been consistent in terms of what he would have been saying to the public and what his interests are and the way in which he thinks Guyana can develop and move forward. And apart from his emphasis on security, he has always talked about the importance of us becoming an educated nation. Not that all of us were not educated before. we started hearing from David Granger, but the fact is that we need to do much more to ensure that our nation is fully educated, not half. And I think one time he called it education apartheid, not where some persons are well educated and then there's another half that the education is limited. You can't access it easily, or some people are just, plain and simple, not educated. So I think the sentiments that came from the president are very interesting. One of the other things that jumped out at me said ignorance is the worst thing in the world. Last week when I was talking to you about the whole GECOM issue and the fact that people are being told to not get registered, I said that I felt that was ignorance, and now here we have the president saying that ignorance is the worst thing in the world. So that gentleman, who I think really and truly is keeps pushing the envelope and spouting ignorance. Here, we have our president reminding us that ignorance is, some people may say, one of the worst things in the world. But again, interesting sentiments coming from the president. You can always learn from that. Those of you who are now joining, and if you have not seen his address or clips of his address yet on social media, we can guarantee you that this will be loaded to my YouTube channel and also Facebook pages. And on the note of Facebook, I know there are some persons in the Facebook land now watching us on the CNS Channel 6 live Facebook feed. So thank you very much to all of you for tuning in. I did tell you that you'll be hearing less from me today. I also wanted to remind you that we now have a new GECOM chair, and for those of you who would have missed it, sometimes now, especially in this heavy political season, or I should say significant political season where so many things are happening, we like to, in a sense, recap what have, I'm so tight-tongued today, but in a sense we like to recap what would have happened earlier in the week. And one of the things that happened earlier this week is the fact that the new GECOM chair, and of course I'm very proud that it's a woman, it's a female, Justice Claudette Singh. And so now we bring you that. It's about 15 minutes or so. So at the end of it, it'll just be time for us to deal with some other housekeeping matters and then wrap up our program. So it is my pleasure now to bring you that activity that took place at the Ministry of the Presidency earlier this week. This would have been the swearing in of new GECOM chair, Justice Claudette Singh. Of course, this is Facing the Nation. It seems that
Prime Minister and Vice President, Honorable Chairman Ramsey, Vice President and Minister of Public Security, Honorable Malika, Vice President and Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Honorable Jagbio, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Minister of Government, Honorable Alison Watson George, Chief Justice, His Excellency Ambassador Paolo, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Honorable Justice Claudette Singh, Chairman of the Election Commission Designate, members of the People's Progressive Party, Mr. Chandra Narayan Sharma, Leader of the Justice for All Party, Director General of the Ministry of the Presidency, Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Commissioner of Police, Commissioners of the Elections Commission, Chief Elections Officer, invited guests, members of the media, and friends. On behalf of His Excellency President David Granger, I would like to welcome you to the Ministry of the Presidency, and more particularly to witness the administering of the oath of office of the Chairman of the Elections Commission of Guyana. The Constitution of Guyana mandates that there shall be an Elections Commission consisting of a full-time chairman and 6 members appointed in accordance with the provisions of Article 1611 and 1613. Additionally, as provided by Article 1612 of the Constitution, the Chairman of the Elections Commission shall be appointed by the President from a list of 6 persons not unacceptable to the President, submitted by the Leader of the Opposition. That process has been completed with the appointee satisfying both the criteria for the appointment and the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Consequently, acting under the aforementioned provisions and by virtue and in the exercise of all powers enabling him in that behalf, Excellency President David Granger will appoint Justice Claudette Margot Cecile Singh as the Chairman of the Elections Commission with effect from today's date, the 29th day of July, 2019, in the 50th year of the Republic. May I now invite Justice Claudette Singh to take office.
I, Claudette Margot Cecile Singh, hereby solemnly declare that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the people of Guyana, that I will faithfully execute the office of Chairman of the Elections Commission without fear or favor, affection or ill will, and that in the execution of the functions of that office I will honor, uphold, and preserve the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and I do so swear, so help me God.
Excellency President David Granger will now offer brief remarks.
Honorable Prime Minister and Vice President, Honorable Barajagil, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Vice Presidents Cameron Slamjatan, Sydney Haddock, Ministers of the Government, Honorable Alison Dr. George, Chief Justice, His Excellency Ambassador Ruby Fowler, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Honorable Justice Claudette Singh, Chairman of the Elections Commission, Commissioners of the Election Commission, invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a good day for the Republic of Guyana. The Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana provides for the establishment of the Elections Commission. As you heard, it states that there shall be an Elections Commission for Guyana consisting of a chairman, who shall be a full-time chairman and shall not engage in any other form of employment, and such other members as may be appointed in accordance with the provisions of this article. The Constitution further mandates the independence of the Elections Commission. It states, the elections shall be independently supervised by the Elections Commission in accordance with the provision of Article 162. The Constitution again describes the function of the Commission. The Elections Commission shall have such functions connected with or relating to the registration of electors or the conduct of elections as are conferred upon it by or under the Constitution or subject thereto. Any act of Parliament is subject to the provision of the Constitution. The Commission shall exercise general direction and supervision over the registration of electors and the administrative conduct of all elections of members of the National Assembly, and shall issue such instruction and take such action as appear to it necessary or expedient to ensure impartiality, fairness, and compliance with the provisions of this Constitution or of any act of Parliament on the part of persons exercising powers or performing duties connected with or relating to the aforesaid matters. Ladies and gentlemen, these are exacting duties and responsibilities. Free, fair, credible, and timely elections are essential elements of a democratic state. The Elections Commission is not a plaything. Its independence is a condition for engendering confidence and public trust in the electoral system and for the efficient conduct of elections. I initiated a consensual process with the leader of the opposition to identify a chairman of the Elections Commission in accordance with the provisions of our Constitution and in accordance with the interpretation of the Supreme Court of Justice. I received from the leader of the opposition a list of 6 names, not unacceptable to me, on the 26th of July. From that list I chose Justice Claudette Singh. The appointment of Justice Claudette Singh means that the Election Commission has a chairman again after a hiatus of a little more than a month. It is now properly constituted and can continue to prepare for the conduct of free, fair, and timely elections. It fulfills the Supreme Court of Justice's ruling in relation to Article 162. Ladies and gentlemen, Justice Claudette Margot Cecile Singh satisfies all of the criteria described in the Constitution for the appointment of a chairman of the Elections Commission. That is to say, the chairman of the Elections Commission shall be a person who holds or who has held the office of a judge of a court having unlimited jurisdiction in civil and criminal matters in some part of the Commonwealth, or a court having jurisdiction in appeals from any such court, or who is qualified to be appointed as a judge. Justice Singh is such a person. She was called to the bar in London in 1973 and admitted to the bar in 1976. Long that most Guyanese are in war. He served as a Deputy Solicitor General and as a puisne judge and as a Justice of Appeal. She led the way in the modernization of the Justice Reform Project during her tenure as the Attorney General's Chamber. Justice Singh brings years of legal experience as a jurist and as a practitioner of the law to her appointment. She is respected widely for her integrity, impartiality, and her independence. I thank her for accepting the appointment. I'm confident that she will discharge her duties in accordance with her oath of office and in compliance with the Constitution and our electoral laws. I wish her every success during her tenure as Chairman of the Elections Commission. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for swiftly coming to a successful conclusion in the selection of the Chairman of the Commission in accordance with the Constitution and the ruling of the Supreme Court of Justice. I recommit the State to providing every assistance to the Commission to enable it to conduct general and regional elections in the shortest time possible. Thank you.
and that would have been the swearing in of the new GECOM chair earlier this week at Ministry of the Presidency. Of course, you heard it there, so there's not much for me to say on that. We're just, I guess at this point, all Guyanese are happy that we have a new GECOM chair and we can move forward as house-to-house registration continues. And again, I want to take this opportunity to urge you to get registered. When GECOM comes your way, get registered. It is very, very important. You don't want to wait until the last minute and then you're scrambling, searching everywhere. It's house-to-house registration. It's very convenient for you at this point. You don't have to go anywhere. So ensure that you get registered. And for those unscrupulous persons in our society, those of us who are ashamed to call Guyanese to who are loosing their dogs on people and being abusive, whether verbally or physically abusive to GECOM workers, I urge that you stop it at this point. And for those of you who don't want to stop, I trust that charges are eventually brought against you, because it is, in so many ways, it is so wrong. I really and truly don't understand some of our people at times, and I urge that you take some time, take a step back, and think about what you have been doing and how wrong it is. And this is also an opportunity for me to call on all our leaders. This is what happens when you go out into the public and you make irresponsible statements and you encourage your supporters to do wrong things. All you are doing at the end of the day is dividing the nation, dividing the population. So stop spouting ignorance. As far as I'm concerned, it is ignorance. And we can try to be a better Guyana as we move forward. Yes, we will be on opposing sides every now and again, especially where politics is concerned. But you as leaders, you have a duty to not put statements out there or not make statements that would irritate and agitate the population. And for some, unfortunately, for some people who just don't want to think for themselves, they will fall for everything that you're saying. And some of you who would like to go down in history as heroes, that wouldn't work. You definitely won't go down in history as heroes. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave our program there for now. Those of you who are now tuning in, you missed an informative one. Of course, we brought to you today the President's main Emancipation address, which would have been made at Unity yesterday. That's the East Berbice Quarantine, number 53 village. We also brought to you the swearing in of the new GECOM chair, and again, we're all relieved that we finally have a new GECOM chair and we can move forward and as the house-to-house registration continues. Again, this is the beginning of a new month. I trust that you've set those goals and those plans and you're going to be working toward achieving them, especially for those of you who may not have achieved everything that you wanted to achieve in July. So set those goals and continue to do everything that you can do to be productive citizens and of course to become successful in your own personal endeavors. Unfortunately, that is all the time I have with you this week on Facing the Nation. I'm Malika Ramsey, urging you to be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Join me next week, and of course, this has been Facing the Nation.